This demonstration will go through the streaming data source as part of the real-time package within Design Studio 1.4. The streaming data source component allows you to connect to a streaming of data within SAP ESP and then connect it to Design Studio so that you can create visualizations of these streams of real-time data. SAP Event Stream Processor, ESP, enables you to create, run your own complex event processing applications to derive continuous intelligence from the streaming event data in real time. So before we begin, prerequisites are that you have Design Studio 1.4 installed and the real-time package for Design Studio 1.4. These can be downloaded from the software marketplace. Once you have Design Studio 1.4 installed, you can then install the real-time package using the tools, install extension to Design Studio, and selecting the downloaded zip file for the real-time package. To review your installed packages, you can go to Help, About, Installation Details, and you'll see that real-time functionality is listed there. For the streaming data source, you're also required to have the latest version of SAP ESP Event Stream Processor installed, version 5.1 SP09. Again, this can be downloaded from the software marketplace. It'll work on BIP and local mode. In the demonstration I will go through, it is on local mode. But if you're installing it on BIP, make sure you have the latest version of ESP and set up your BI authentication. So for any other information you require on installation, you can refer to the administration guide for Business Objects Design Studio and also the configuration and administration guide for ESP. ESP also has further information on configuring your clusters within ESP in the cluster configuration guide. So before we create a new application and a streaming data source within Design Studio, you need to ensure that your Event Stream Processor instance has a project running with data streaming. So I'm going to demonstrate using a local cluster. So firstly, connect that server and then start a project within that local cluster. Also ensure that you have your WSP bat file running. So WSP now is running in the background. And if we go back, my project is now running. There's a number of topics there. And out window, which I'm going to use in this demonstration, is now streaming data. So I have a number of columns there: build quantity, net sales, distribution, calendar quarter, and also I have event time as a column. So depending on the chart you're connecting to, it may be important that there is a column with the correct time format within it to show time as a dimension. For instance, a time-based line chart. So if we go back to Design Studio, I'm now going to create streaming data source. To do this, you go down to your outline, you go under the data source folder and right click under add custom data source and then select streaming data source. Once you've added a streaming data source, you will see on the right hand side there will be additional properties for that streaming data source, and within that there will be 3 tabs. So these are your 3 additional property tabs. The first tab is called your ESP configuration, and this is going to enable me to configure my streaming data source. So first you need to enter your host and REST port, which will then allow me to select my available workspaces, projects and topics within ESP. So I'm using a local cluster and a local instance of ESP, so local host will be my host, 90, then 9091 for my port. I will not be using the security, which is enabled by default, so I'm just going to unselect it, but if for further information, please refer to the Application Designer Guide for Business Objects and the Administration Guide. For credentials, you're connecting to your instance of ESP, so you're using the credentials for that instance. And you select Connect. So once a successful connection has been made, it will show a green indicator here and also a status of connect. But if it was unsuccessful, it would show a red icon and a short status of what the issue was. Now that I'm connected, it will also show if there's a successful connection to available workspaces and projects and topics. So it will have my project, which was CL Tutorial Jitter, and my topic, which is the out window. There's also the other two topics, which I can also select, but for this demonstration, I'll be using out window. The user is also able to update the update interval in milliseconds, but by default, this is 1000 milliseconds, which I will leave for this demonstration. If we now move to the second tab, this is your measure dimension configuration, which allows you to review and configure your measures and dimensions under data types. So currently SAP ESP has no concept of a measure or a dimension, so as a result, default rules have been applied by the system to decide if a column is a measure or a dimension. So these rules are: if a column is a primary key in SAP ESP, it is considered a dimension. If a column is a number in SAP ESP, it is considered a measure. And then any remaining columns are considered dimensions. But the user also has the ability, as you can see, to configure some of these. So net sales and bill quantity, if the user wish, could be changed from a measure to a dimension. So once the user has reviewed these data types and updated if required, can then move to our third tab. So this tab is called your data selection for rows and columns, and it allows you to select your measures and dimensions under primary values, rows and columns. So I will set up my measures, and I'm going to select one dimension, my event time, under columns. And there's also the ability to select a live preview. This allows you to show the streaming data at design time so that you can review it before you run in runtime. So for any other information that you require on any of these properties, you can review it in the Application Designer Guide for Business Objects Design Studio. So now we're going to add a chart component to visualize our streaming data source. So under Analytic Components, you can select the chart component, and then you must assign the data source. So if we click on our streaming data source, we can use drag and drop to drop it onto our chart component. As you can see, there's no data currently available. So until you actually select the live stream, live preview, no data will be displayed. But once selected, you'll see a live preview in design time of your streaming data coming from ESP. So by default, your chart component will always be the chart type for column, but the user has the ability to select any chart type that's available in Design Studio. So area, bar, column, line, pie, radar, scatter, waterfall, but also the additional charts that are available within Design Studio, such as your heat, tree, trellis, and so on. And also the time-based line chart, which is actually part of the real-time package. So I'll set up the heat map. So any of the additional charts require you to select your actual measures and dimensions again that you want for that particular chart and apply them. So we're reviewing it currently at design time, but you can also review locally by going to execute locally. And it also requires you to log into your instance of ESP. So again, it's the credentials you applied on your ESP installation. And you can see the charts displaying now at runtime. And if you go back to Design Studio, we can see it's still displaying as well at design time. So this ends the demonstration of the streaming data source. Thank you.